All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samo?
You wanted to talk about health and connectedness and social well-being being connected to our physical well-being. So hopefully somebody gets something out of this episode and for themselves or their loved ones. And for those that are just listening, uh, it's your lucky day because Heath doesn't have a camera. For those that are watching, it's exceptionally your lucky day because Heath doesn't have a camera. So
Yeah,
we might get it in
yeah.
the middle of the episode, but we'll find out here.
Okay. Well, we're still kind of spinning off of the same stuff we've been yelling at the clouds about for the last couple weeks because so much of not just our individual mental health crisis, but then where this affects our cultural mental health crisis is that it is so much easier to other people
Mm.
if you don't connect with them. I think
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I quoted or I paraphrased as close to the quote as I could get Chase Hughes on that 2 episodes ago when I said you have more in common with your neighbor who votes differently than you than the person on TV that votes the same way as you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I mentioned this a long time ago, and I think it bears repeating because the channel is so good and the example is so stark. And in fact, we may get into this a little bit about the difference between comparison and analogy. But um, so actually,
Well,
let me
can
start
you do
there.
can you do a 30-second elevator speech on the difference?
Yeah, look, if I say, Sam, you are acting like a child.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I am not calling you a child. I am not saying you're throwing a tantrum being a brat. I'm saying a look, if your son did this thing, you would get upset at him and tell him this. Well, you're doing something similar. I am not insulting your intelligence. I am not insulting your maturity. I am using an example to demonstrate something to you. That is very different than saying you're a child, you're a brat,
Mm-hmm.
you're being immature. Okay. Now, sometimes that more extreme direct comparison may be warranted and it may be necessary to, line up airplane style while we all smack some sense into Sam. God, I need to see that. It's been a long time since I've seen that movie. I love that movie. Um, but the point being, there is this fine line between drawing historical parallels and saying, hey, F.A. Hayek style, this is the road to serfdom. We are going down a slippery slope which ends somewhere bad, and actually saying we are there and you are the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm about to make a World War II analogy.
Yeah, this is actually very important for my field, whether that's physical health or mental health, because this is why I like the dimensional approach as opposed to the categorical approach. In addition to all the other reasons, I prefer the dimensional approach. But when you're talking to somebody or you're talking about somebody or trying to make a change, whether it's physical or behaviorally, you don't say you are this. You say you have these, we'll call them symptoms for now. You have these symptoms. Like, so I'm working with somebody who's overweight. I need to address their donut eating habits, right? I don't say you're a donut addict. I don't say you're a donut, you are a donut eater. It sounds like a ridiculous analogy, but think of something in your life where it kind of was similar and and you've heard it before. And put it next to the ridiculous statement, and it's exactly the same, and you kind of laugh about it, and now you can pull it down a level. Okay, so I don't say, "Hey, donut eater, get here, get over here, do this, do that."
Mm-hmm.
No, you say, "Hey, you ate a donut. We need to eat less of them, so let's try to do better next time." It's like, well, you brought up the child, disciplining your child, and this is a difficult one as a parent that I struggle with because my child's mental health is very much partly my responsibility. And I say very much partly because like 90%. he is an individual. He has agency, but at the same time, I am forming him into an adult as his parent. And I say, "Oh, you did this stupid thing," and he goes, "I know I'm stupid." It's like, "No, that's not what I said."
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, that's not what I said. I said, "You did this stupid thing." It is the behavior you did that was the problem. It isn't you unless you continue to do behavior.
And so we see that in the elevation of the incendiary language, especially online,
Mhm.
because are no longer saying, hey, this is authoritarian style policy or behavior, or will lead to that, or could lead to this. We are saying, you are this, you are doing that. And
Mhm.
it isn't always, sometimes it is, but it isn't always applicable. And where I was going with the analogy is I've mentioned before the World War II channel, which are the same guys that did World War One, the World War One channel, where they did it week by week as if they were reporting the news in real time. And when they did World War II, they did a special once or twice a month segment called The War Against Humanity, because that was a major part of World War II, is how many civilians were either caught in the crosshairs or purposefully targeted. And something a lot of people don't realize about Germany is that you look at their military and what they were able to do in World War II, and you're like, wow, how did they manage to do that? How did a relatively small country compared to the Allies, how did they manage to hold their own and even get wins? And well, what a lot of people don't realize is they had such a big army because their economy was run by literal slave labor. And they did this episode early on in the War Against Humanity where Goebbels and the propaganda ministry had to send out strict guidelines to people demanding that they stop having dinner with their slaves because they were realizing these are real people.
Mhm.
So this was especially happening in smaller things, specifically agriculture, because you're not in a big like dormitory of workers working in a factory. You are shipped off. They take these, you know, Polish or Czech or some Russian and Ukrainian, but mostly the Polish and the Czech and that those Eastern
But
European
Heath,
people.
white people were never slaves.
Exactly. Well, but they were other. They had been othered for a decade, and that had seeped in. And I haven't referenced this in a while, but again, I recommend everybody read Sebastian Haffner's Defying Hitler, because he is very self-critical about how I let this affect me, even though I didn't believe it, but I still
Well,
let it affect me. Here's how.
and of all the people that would know exactly how this works, it is Goebbels because he was the propaganda minister.
Hmm.
He was the guy responsible for making you believe what you believed. And
Yeah.
I brought it up before, the diamonds are forever example. We overnight started saying that as a country, not we as in me because I wasn't born in the 1920s, but we started saying that overnight that diamonds are forever, and it became the engagement ring thing. So De Beers can
Hmm.
sell a lot more diamonds to the retailers because of Bernays, who was Freud's nephew.
Hmm.
He created a propaganda campaign that was so powerful, everybody felt like it was what they thought their entire life.
Hmm. And but then if you just take a second to break out of that rigid mental thinking, so back to the example is these farmers would get these farm helpers, and the most practical way to do things is, especially if you have a small farm, well, the farm hands and the farmers all eat around the same table just for just practical logistics. Well, when you sit and you share a meal with someone, you are inevitably going to look them in the face and going to talk to them. And then you're going to realize, oh, they aren't other. They
Hmm.
might speak differently. Maybe they attend a different denomination than we do. Their history is different, but that's still a human being. And they aren't that much different than me and my family.
Well, that's one reason I brought up the Christmas truce
Mm,
because that it was the spending time together that all of these soldiers realized, why are we shooting at each other? And
yeah.
you had to point out the obvious, Captain Obvious. The leaderships made them do it again. Now, I don't know the accuracy of it. You're more well read in the history of this, but Sapolsky brings up that even after the leadership did that, they would give each other clues of where to be so they could shoot at the enemy trenches without hurting anybody and stuff like that. So it still carried on, but it was the contact that was the point.
Hmm.
It was the getting to know each other, the playing soccer. They didn't even speak the same language, most of them.
Yeah.
Maybe there was translators in some areas, but not every American spoke German or every Brit spoke German and not every German spoke English. So yeah, it's definitely
It, and it didn't matter. So I can actually speak to that directly and personally because when we were living in Heidelberg, we attended church off base. We didn't attend the chapel service on base, and it was a German church that had an English service. And so 3 weeks out of the month, we would have separate services. And then once a month, and then on special occasions like Easter and Christmas, we would have a joint service. And everyone would sing hymns in their own language. And it didn't matter. It was still a connection. And most of the congregation spoke at least some degree of English because in Western Europe, most people speak at least some
especially
English.
around a base.
Yeah. But the and then the preacher would give the sermon in English and German, sometimes back and forth, sometimes give one and then give the other, and then we would all gather around in the fellowship hall and share a meal together, and it didn't matter what the difference in language was. We connected because we were in the same space, sharing the same ideals, even though we do have differences because we're American, they're German, we have, different history, different politics, different whatever, but we came together over this thing and we connected.
Hmm. Which is why I hate the direction a lot of sports is going for theater purposes.
Mm,
Is I did something my coaches hated. And apparently, a lot of coaches hate it because it's the direction of mixed martial arts now. This fight right here, where I have these gloves and that fight pass that's hanging behind me, I talked to my opponent before weigh-ins,
mm,
and he was a cool guy. He was fantastic, and we weighed in, and we're going out to the ring, and this one of my coaches was in my ear going, "He's breaking into your house to rape your wife, and he's gonna da 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 da," trying to like pump me up.
yeah.
And I just looked at him and I said, "How about I just want to win?
Hmm.
Isn't that enough? I just hate losing. I want to win." I met him at weigh-ins, and he's a cool guy. And the loser buys the beer after, okay? And they hated that. They hated that I was that way with my opponents. And you see it now because look at this is one reason I don't watch a lot of MMA anymore is because every fight's like an existential crisis. Every fight is this
Yeah.
guy is the mortal enemy of the other guy. And I'm like, I just want to see a good fight.
Yep.
Remember Stephan Bonner and Forrest Griffin?
Oh yeah.
One of the most fantastic fights ever to happen. And they were friends before the fight, and they were friends after the fight, and they hugged as soon as it was over because they it didn't matter that they were punching each other in the face.
During
They
the
just wanted to win.
at
It
the end of the
wasn't about I
fight,
hate you.
it was we're going to overtime. It's like, let's go, bro. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
It,
They're sharing one of the best moments in MMA together.
mhm.
They shared something there. They didn't hate each other. When did we get away from that? When we got away from that was when I kind of stopped watching, realistically.
I feel like this is all tied into the things we've been talking about with with Martha Beck's work in her book, and just the idea generally about rigid mental thinking is that the reason rigid mental thinking is easy is the same reason mental rigid physicality is easy. You get into a rut.
Mm.
For anyone who's never driven on a dirt road, you get into the ruts because that's the easy way to go. The problem is sometimes those ruts lead
Get
you
too
right
deep.
into
Yeah.
they get too deep and then you can't get out. That does happen, or those ruts lead you right into, it's been a while since you've been there, but the old family farm is you get a big storm come through, and because of the sandy nature of that soil, it'll wash out a big chunk of that trail. And those ruts will lead you right into a big drop off that, oh boy, are you in trouble if you can't back out.
Yeah, and even you said a word trail there too. This is the old famous poem. Do you take the trail most traveled?
Mhm.
It's probably most used commencement speech poem ever. Uh, and if you take the road less traveled or the trail less traveled, it's going to be more difficult. But you're going to experience a lot more of life, which I guess let's start with this paper then. I got one of the things we wanted to do is Heath wanted me to bring in kind of literature from the
Mhm.
research on these topics to kind of bring it home a little bit. And yeah, it gets a little more dry at that point, but at the same time, it's like it adds to we're just not speaking at the clouds. We're not just people giving our opinions. This is stuff that has actually been researched, and it actually was very beneficial that I'm in a class on aging right now, so it's very fresh in my mind. Some of these things were things I already knew, but it's very fresh, and I can bring up a specific paper of a specific meta-analysis or something to go along with that. And so we'll start with the first one is for healthy aging, diversity of experience is important. So you have to get out of these ruts. If you get in these ruts and you stay in them, you're actually hurting your physical health. So this is Cofferly and oh, how do you pronounce that one? Druelis?
Goodness, who knows?
All right, if you're watching, you can see it. But oh, we got a camera. Oh, our day just got worse. We can see Heath's
Yep.
face too now. But what they found in these studies were that experiencing different things. And this is where actually I had a long debate with the class. I'll go into the debate in a second, but having a very wide range of experiences was actually beneficial for your mental health as you get over six. When I say aging, we kind of use 65 and over as the cutoff for that for aged individuals. So as you get into these golden years of your life, the more diverse your experiences are in life, and the more diverse they are as you're aging, you live longer, but also you live healthier as you live longer. Our medical system is great at keeping you alive,
Yeah.
but you can be alive in your bed for a long, long time.
I mentioned that several weeks back, and it bears repeating given some of the recent news, which we won't go into. Don't want to go down that rabbit hole yet
Which
about
what
about the HHS announcement.
acetaminophen?
Um, but there was that. But so I'm gonna steal this from a comedian I really like who's super autistic because I stole this joke and because I sent it to my wife. But a lot of people were using the uh the news banner, especially the one from Fox News, where they had this news banner with RFK and Trump, and then it said autism announcement. And I sent that screenshot to my wife and said, "Me, whenever you ask me how my day was, prepare
Nice.
yourself, incoming autism announcement." But um, anyway,
Well, yeah, my son's technically on the what do they currently call the spectrum,
right.
and but you ask him about his day, like you said, like, hey, how was school today, and what did you do, and da da da, da, and you ask specific questions, and he goes, good.
Yep. So the point I was making was this really annoyed me like a month or so back when RFK was really trying to clean house in HHS and talking about our chronic health problems in the United States and how they've been growing for decades. And all these, no other way to put it, just anti-Trump people that weren't engaging on the idea kept pushing back and laughing it off by posting life expectancy. Hold on, guys. That's not what he said. In much the same way of your analogy of, hey, son, that thing you did was dumb. Yeah, I know I'm dumb. No, that's not what I said. RFK Jr. is not talking about life expectancy. He's talking about the quality of that life.
Hmm. Well,
That's
but
important.
the worst thing is, though, that life expectancy itself is going down now.
Yes.
Gen Z is the first generation to have a lower life expectancy than the one before since we've been tracking this.
Mm-hmm.
That's not good. Well, we've and in my field, we've always talked about obesity, but I mean, a lot now that I've expanded beyond my field, it's all of it. Peter Attia on Flagrant the other day said, there is no one thing. We're
Mm.
dying by a death by 1,000 cuts,
Yeah.
and all we want to do is live our best life till we die. But we're making it worse by adding cuts. And so, yeah, so this is one thing. And I want to go into one thing on acetaminophen. Let me get the disclaimer. This is not direct health advice. If your doctor says do that, we'll do whatever your doctor says. But acetaminophen, I actually wonder how it's available over the counter because it wrecks your liver more than any other substance we have over the counter,
Even more than alcohol.
way more than alcohol,
Wow.
exponentially more than alcohol. So, yeah, I don't know why it is the common headache medicine. And if you don't
Disconcerting.
think that's going to have some effect on your
Mm-hmm.
baby, I don't care
Mm-hmm.
if they're right about. And by the way, the information on the autism uh, correlation was released before Trump and RFK
Mm-hmm.
were in their positions. It was Harvard University that released that. And they're acting on the information that Harvard provided. So, yes, it's a correlation. We don't know if there's causation, but it is enough of a correlation that we should say, whoa, maybe we should pump some brakes.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but acetaminophen in general is very damaging. And if something that damages your own body also will have an effect on the body that's inside you. And if you are taking a medicine, and this is going to be my soapbox, and you can take over for a second because I'm getting heated. If you are taking any medication unnecessarily while you are pregnant, you should be in jail for child abuse. And all of these people taking a bunch of Tylenol just because they're trying to stuff it in the face of the current
My
administration.
gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, the CPS should be at their door at birth. And yeah, speak of rigid thinking and ideology, they're doing it just to stuff it in the face of the current administration. They don't know anything about acetaminophen.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't ask their doctor anything about acetaminophen. They're just taking it to say, I'm going to do this because you said don't do it. No, maybe you should have done a little research on, oh, this actually is harmful in other ways too. Maybe I shouldn't do it. Maybe I should do it in the worst case scenario, which is what your doctor should be telling you. Oh, yes, you can take that while you're pregnant, but only if it is absolutely necessary. But nope, that's not what's happening. They're doing it just to stuff it in the face of somebody and for clicks,
Mm-hmm.
for likes on TikTok or whatever. That's child abuse that can do
Well,
permanent damage.
that
And
brings us right back to what the main topic here is because you're doing that for clicks. What is that? That is engagement. That is the facsimile of connection.
I forgot that's
Because
our topic today. I got so heated.
but that is one of the problems. And while I was puttering around today, I went back and I was listening to Joe Rogan a few months ago. He had on Dave Landau, who's one of my favorite active comedians. Um, and I've referenced his show Normal World, which is a load of fun. But they were talking about this because Landau has a young son, and he's worried about especially chat bots. I mean, it
Mm.
was bad enough when you were just online for the clicks and the engagement, and now you don't even need that facsimile. Now you have a facsimile of a facsimile, which, if
Oh
you've seen
gosh, I just
Multiplicity, oh boy, she touched my peppy, Steve.
I think that leg's gonna have to come off. Yeah,
Ex-
the
I,
yeah,
so
no. I just saw this. It was one of the things on my feed this morning while I was on the toilet flipping through, and it was like, just remember who you're arguing with, and it was a picture of a bunch of servers. I mean, it's true. You're
uh,
arguing with a bunch of servers in Morocco or wherever they do it now because they got caught in Morocco. I don't know. But yeah, that's what you're arguing with. It's a bunch of bots. That's why they say the same damn thing.
yeah,
And they say
yeah.
it with like that. Like you will type something and it's like, boom, back, right back to you. And I'm like, okay, well, this is a bot.
Hmm. And it is doing double damage in my mind. And you tell me if this is technically correct, but I feel like it's especially worse with the bots, as I say, because that's a facsimile of a facsimile. But you're doing double damage because one, you think you are getting that connection, that human connection, but you're not because you are acting virtually. We've used the example before of climbing an artificial wall versus climbing a real wall, a
Hmm.
real rock face.
Or or line dancing versus regular dancing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you think, it's mental junk food. I have it. I used that example several months ago, and I was like, oh man, that's good. I need to remember that. It's psychological junk food. It's
Hmm.
because, oh, I
It
feel
gives you
full.
that kick that you get from having
Mhm.
food in the wild, but it's synthetic.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so much like the high that drops from other substances, you feel worse afterwards. But
Pain, pain even.
then on
Yeah.
top of that, these these click farms and these the rage bait and the grifters are feeding the negativity. So you're getting kind of a double whammy because you are being fed negativity and rage bait, and then you think you're connecting with a community, but you're not. So you're not getting the positive reinforcement that you think you are while you are being overwhelmed with negativity.
Hmm. And I'm going to take it another layer. I need to get the name to give the credit to, but it was on Modern Wisdom. He is the foremost researcher on revenge, on
Hmm.
people's feelings with revenge. I'll get the name before when you go on your next monologue, but it's the point of it is it actually fires up the centers of your brain that are also fired up when you have it like an alcohol addiction or a cocaine
Hmm.
addiction or something. So revenge in and of itself becomes an addictive process. And so if you're feeding that through social media, just like any drug, we call gateway drugs, right? Anything
Right.
that gets your dopaminergic system going makes it more likely or desensitizes you to the next experience. You see this with self-harm. Self-harm is a big lead into possibly too much self-harm that you don't make it out of it. I'm not going to use the word because you over time desensitize yourself to the harm, and it provides an addictive component to it because people who do that have a trigger in their brain that says this actually made me feel alive. This
Hmm.
actually made me feel something. So we talk about major depression or bipolar disorder, anything that puts you in that state of I feel nothing. And now I cut myself and then you feel something. Now I have to cut myself a little more. Now I have to cut myself a little more. And it just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes until eventually it's too much. And rage bait is exactly the same way. So that connectiveness, you have a need for that, but you're basically going down a rabbit hole that can lead you to that addiction of I have to hate this person.
Do you
So much
have
so that I'm going to damage my child in the process.
um is one of your sources about, because you just said one of the things I wanted to get into is you need that. Is I think that is an important part of what with the kind of witchcraft I wanted you to bring up, is because I think it's worth reinforcing, because you might know kind of intellectually, hey, I need to do this thing. I know I need to get up and exercise when we're done yelling at the clouds here. Otherwise, I'm gonna have a bad headache tonight. My back's gonna be really stiff. I'm gonna be have trouble sleeping, and it's all gonna snowball downhill. But I'm really freaking tired, and I don't want to, right? So it sometimes you need that reinforcement of, all right, yeah, but you don't want to. But here's what happens if you don't, and hey, here's what happens if you do. So a little bit of reinforcement here to kind of nudge you into doing those uncomfortable things.
Okay, so this is an article from Human Longevity, and it's based on uh, that Harvard research I was talking about, Dr. Robert Waldinger's research. I want to emphasize this for those that are just listening. I'll read it out loud, but if you see it, 80-year Harvard study,
That's incredible.
80-year longitudinal study. This is actually what we need more of when we talk about
Hmm.
aging, because and they have one at my university, UHCL, where they're studying physical health over time, but they're only like 5 years into it. Uh, the problem, the main thing is we need researchers that are so future thinking that they will not sit under the shade of the tree they plant. Because 80 years is a long time. Do you think he, here's the picture of him. He's decently aged, but he's not 80 years old, which means he hasn't been doing studies for 80 years. Someone started this and other people continued it, and the people who started it might not be seeing the results.
So he
So,
scroll down a little bit more, because I love that up to that first paragraph there in this section is that following the lives of 724 men for nearly 80 years.
mhm.
You know, that's a heck of a study, and that's going to give you not just because of um you're going to get the surface level stuff of whom this is interesting, but then because you have such a significant cohort over such a long period of time, who knows what else you may be able to dig out of there, or to your point, what someone else might be able to dig out of there. Once you publish your research and you make your data, more importantly, the raw data available, is what else might we find if we dig around in here?
Well, and the good thing is you're constantly releasing papers on this. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
we're at year 10 and this is what we found. We're at year 12 and this is what we found, all the way up to this 80-year mark. And in that discussion section, if anybody's read a scientific paper, you're speculating on how this could change, what we might get wrong or whatever. And then the next one, you can in that same one be like, oh, well, we thought this and we were right that this is what could have been different and now we see it is different, or oh no, we were actually on the right track all the time, and you can like fine tune your
Mm-hmm.
measurements and everything along the way. So that's important, but not to derail us. The main takeaway here is strong, reading number one here. Strong social connections are fundamental to mental health, reducing anxiety, stress, depression, also stress in the opposite direction, and cognitive decline. Oh, everybody's afraid of dementia, right? They
Mm-hmm.
say, oh, it's just a natural part of aging, right? No, it turns out there's something we can do. Have strong social connections, right? And fostering a sense of purpose. We've talked about it, that ad nauseum. Uh, the second finding specific to the study was they found that deep, high quality relationships, not the number of friends, are the strongest predictors of long-term health and happiness. So, to your point about internet connections and likes and all of that, that gives you a slight little boost But is that really a strong connection?
Yeah.
Is that same person going to like your next video? No, possibly. We don't know. You don't even know who that person is. And then Blue Zones research, which is real popular, but I'm not the biggest fan of Blue Zones research because there's also genetic homogeneity there
Mm.
and so many confounders like that, like geographical homogeneity, weather, environment,
What
all
is
of
Blue Zones research? I don't think you've mentioned that
blue
before.
zone. Okay, so blue zones are where people live a long time.
Okay.
So like Japan is considered a blue zone because there's more centennials in Japan per capita than anywhere else in the world.
Hmm.
So where people live a long time are what we call blue zones. But it does show that tightly knit communities in a intergenerational relationships contribute to high, exceptional longevity, lower chronic disease rates, and overall well-being. And lower chronic disease rates is important because chronic diseases are usually chronic stress related.
Mm.
So if you have high blood pressure, for instance, you're doing something that stresses your cardiovascular system for a long period of time that contributes to the hardening of the walls of the arteries that results in high blood pressure. So that's the main important one because it's about stressors. And if having close connections reduces stress, it doesn't matter why. Over time, you have a better result. It could be that well, financial stress. You use that one. If you have close family that are there to help you anytime you have a crisis, that's going to reduce the stress of the crisis financially, right? So, you're close with your brother, sister, and your mother, and your car breaks down and you're paycheck to paycheck. Well, you might be able to go borrow a car and go to work until you get your car repaired, and then you can use your car to go to work. That's something that if you don't have those close connections, what do? Call into work because you don't have a car? Well, now you don't have the money.
Mm.
So yeah, that's just reduction in stress is probably the most important one there.
Well, the connection here, and that's what I really wanted to focus on. I mean, you're really hitting on it, and in that in that element because as you say, with these facsimiles, we now have these virtual friendships. There isn't a connection there, so it's not real. And these examples of, you know, my brother's, feeling down, so he texts me, "Hey, can you talk or what's?" And I'm
Hmm.
like, "Well, I kind of out of it right now. I got a bad headache. I can't talk, but you can text me whatever, and it may take me a second to reply. But yeah, what's going on? How you feeling?" And sometimes we back and forth about how we're feeling. We might get personal, we might get real, as the kids would say. And sometimes it's just, I need someone to take my mind off this thing.
No cap,
Hey,
man.
yeah, it's
Sorry, I think they're beyond real. I think there's something else in it.
word up, homie.
Yeah, yeah.
Hello, fellow kids. Uh, but sometimes it's just you need that person who you connect with to, hey, I'm rewatching this movie and I've never thought about this or noticed that scene. I mean, that's what we do on Saturdays. That's what
I
we've
was
been
about to
doing
say
with
we
our
did a whole
oh,
series on probably
for
150 episodes.
yeah, several years now, overthinking the wheel of time because you know what?
So
It's
that's
not
about 300 hours.
it's not just it's not just the distraction of, hey, this is really interesting, this stretches my brain, but it's also the you're talking about it with someone,
Hmm.
and there's enough of a connection here that we can do that. And there is, to the debt, to the research there's a major stress relief component to that.
Hmm.
It calms your nervous system down. Another example that I like to use, because I like to, you know, brag about my wife and our relationship, is I just like being in the same room. I could be sitting here with my headset on. She's sitting over there with her headset on, because she's watching TV while we're yelling at the clouds, and it just makes me feel better. I
Hmm.
just feel more relaxed when we're in the same room. And we talk about important stuff. We talk about inconsequential stuff. And sometimes we just sit, and it's comforting because we already have that established connection. If you don't have that established connection and you're just sitting quietly, that's awkward.
Well, and so we can go all the way into the what you call the witchcraft, and you
Mm,
hate because it makes us summation of parts. But what chemicals are you releasing at the time? Are you releasing glucocorticoids, the precursors to cortisol? Everybody demonizes cortisol, right? Well, in this case, yes, because it creates oxidative
mm,
stress on your system. And oxidative stress breaks down everything. So if there's oxidative stress on your blood vessels, they become hard over time, which leads to high blood pressure. If there's oxidative stress on your brain, then those connections aren't as strong and they become rigid. Are you releasing oxytocin? Well, oxytocin going through there or dopamine going through a system, that actually encourages your body to connect, which is good and bad. Both of these things are good and bad. There's good to cortisol because you want to break down some tissues. I want to break down fats if I need energy, right? I need
mm.
cortisol for that. But if I want to create connections in my brain, good if it's time with my significant other who I am raising children with, and I don't want those children to die. Uh, if it's that ends up being good for my health overall. So yeah, these connections are all being built and formed based on these chemicals, which chemicals are going off. All right, well, so that brings up one of the other papers I had because very similar to your online connection versus uh, real human connection. So this one talks about institutional support versus actual community, actual family support.
Mm.
And it blows me away that the same people that write these and assign these papers are the ones that are the commies because institutional support, the argument for institutional support is that if we just threw money at it and made it
Yep.
available to
Yep.
everybody, everybody would be fine, right? But here we got the title of the paper, if I can get our faces out of the way: Social Relationships and the Health of Older Adults, an example of social connectedness and perceived social support. The
Perceived, huh?
the gist of this paper is no matter how much, there is no difference if you look at how much institutional support someone gets versus the actual power of having community support. Now, the conclusion of the authors is more along that socialist bend of, oh, if we were just all communal, it would happen. But no, all their research, the meta-analysis they did, pulls together that it was family, it was friends, it was close connections, church groups, things along those lines. Another
Well,
similar.
I've referenced this book before, and I just looked it up because I can never remember the author. And this is an interesting synopsis of the book Bowling Alone, by Robert Putnam. I forgot how old this book was. This book was published in 2000. It was developed from
Don't
his
say
19.
2000 is old.
Yeah, we're old, dude. It was developed from his 1995 essay entitled Bowling Alone: America's Declining Social Capital. Putnam surveys the decline of social capital in the United States since 1950. He has described the reduction in all forms of in-person social intercourse upon which Americans used to found, educate, and enrich the fabric of their social lives. He was noticing this in 1995. Has it gotten better or worse?
Mm-hmm.
Because the key there is in person. And when you were in, again, to the example he uses of bowling and bowling leagues, and you were with your neighbors. You were with, maybe you didn't go to the same church, but hey, I know that guy. He goes to the Baptist church. We go to the Methodist church. We're going, how you doing? How's the kids? It's, you were with your community.
Mm-hmm. And this next one, examining the social networks of older adults receiving informal or formal care, systematic review, which means they took a bunch of studies, which I think, yeah, 121 studies. They ended up after their criteria were met. Uh, and this one of the things that was interesting was that uh, people who actively made multiple ties, like joined a bingo club, or or like you said, a bowling club, or uh, the church activity group, or things that were interactive, but you had to actually go do.
Mm,
They didn't just come to you. Those were the
mm,
people that did the best. And going back to that diversity of experience, chicken or egg here are people who are more proactive in creating ties, just healthier in general, or do the ties make them healthier? Or is it a positive feedback loop?
mm, mm. You said something there that may go, and that may be worth unpacking more at another time because right now it's just kind of noodling around in my brain. But I feel like there's a definitely a significant there. The idea of going out, of
Hmm.
going of so like for instance, one of the hardest things to do, and we haven't talked about this in a while, but when you are in sales, especially if you are selling yourself, one of the hardest things to do is not
Hey,
give
hey, hey,
away
quit bringing
training.
up my escort service.
Giggity. But
It's not making
but
any money, by the way.
if you are a trainer, you especially if you are starting out, it's very tempting to give away free training because you think, hey, I'm confident in myself, I can sell myself. The problem is if they don't have skin in the game, they're not invested. That, all right, I will give you a free evaluation and tell you what I see and what I think you need and kind of what my general plan would be for you. I'm not giving you free training because you won't value it and you won't
Mhm.
value me.
There is an art to that.
Hmm.
So I'm going to kind of push back a little bit. Free is better than discounted.
Mm,
If you give 2 free sessions, you're more likely to have a long-term client than if you give, well, no, you're you're less likely to have the long-term client, but you're going to get full price for that client.
mm,
If you give a discount, you always have to, they will
yeah,
always hold you to the discount. So free is better than discount, and sometimes you need that carrot to get the just the activation to begin with.
yeah.
And but the art to it is you have to make them understand. You have to walk a tightrope of getting them a little bit of result in the first couple sessions, but making sure they understand this is a long-term process
Mm,
and 2 sessions ain't enough.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
the point being, because we're talking about these facsimiles
Yeah,
of
sorry that
connection,
derailed a little bit, but we got out of
is
our rut. We we
yeah.
we went on the unbeaten path.
um like so for instance, I play games with my kids. We play Helldivers and some other things lately, and it's fun and it's connection, but it is not the same as when I actually go up to visit my son. Now he lives 4 to 5 hours away, depending on obnoxious DFW traffic. So hanging out virtually, texting each other about, now he's getting towards the end of Path of Daggers. He's like, oh my gosh, what's going on? You know, where where is Deshiva coming out of nowhere with all this detailed information? And I get to tell him, Raffo, haha.
Right.
It's my turn to say it now. That is a connection, but it's a connection because we already have a real connection and because we continue to connect in reality because we try and go up there every other month or so to visit, so that can help reinforce, that can help, you know when you hurt your man boob, you couldn't do the workouts you wanted to do, but you could do something.
I've
And
got
so
videos of me working out with my sling on.
and with your what on your,
My
oh,
sling.
oh no.
No,
Uh
my sling on. Yes.
but the point being, that's better than nothing. And especially because it was working you to back to doing what you needed to do, what you wanted to do. So I think there's definitely a deeper there about that, you know, in-person connection and about going out to do a thing.
Well,
Rather
and
than just being passively having, let me get on a Zoom call with my friends. Let me, you know, let me get online and play a game with people. I mean, that's not nothing, but I feel like that has to be a bridge to get you to the real connection.
well, now that I think about it, and we have to make comments on these articles for class on a server thing, and then respond to each other's comments. I might make an extra one outside of the required ones because now that I think about it in this conversation, the purposeful nature of it might be part of the key.
Mm.
Because stress is different when you do it on purpose versus when it's forced upon you. We know this from
Hmm.
all kinds of studies, whether it's physical or mental or whatever. Ice bath studies is a great example. If you purposefully get into that stress, it has a different result than if someone pours ice on you.
If you
And
punch me in the shoulder when I'm not expecting it, and it's, ow, man, what'd you do that for? Like, and you could do it like half power. You throw an 80% punch at me while we're sparring, I don't feel it the same way.
yeah, I mean, but that's all things. So if you exercise
Hmm.
and you go in and you say, I'm going to get on the treadmill and run 5 miles, your hormonal response is different than if a lion jumps out of the bushes and it takes 5 miles of running to get away from it. It's a completely different
Hmm.
experience. So that purposeful, proactive sociality, it only makes sense that it's going to have a different stress response than surprise party.
Hmm.
Oh man, and we usually celebrate surprise parties. We might be stressing the fuck out of some people.
Well, it, make sure you know the surprise E and if that is actually going to be good for them or not. Because for some people, that man, that's a big boost. That's a, oh geez, thanks guys. And for
You
others, it's,
care about
oh
me.
geez,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was not prepared to people today. Did you have other witchcraft? Because that actually leads me back to Martha
No,
Beck and
no,
her
no. Go
the
into it.
chapter
Go
I'm
into
on.
it. It's all down the
So
same line, and we're beating this horse. So
because you brought up that stressor and that different the fight or flight response. So I mean, yeah, it's easy to say, hey, get out there and connect, but um if you have those difficulties, especially if you have gotten into a mental rut, it's I uh my wife complains all the time of, wow, I don't know how people meet people anymore because if I had not met my husband, if I had not made friends in college where you're hanging out, well, we did. Who the heck knows if people actually hang out anymore? Is you're hanging out down in the dorm lobby, just
too much
talking,
for
just
me that first semester. Too
exactly, just
much. Yeah.
playing spades, playing a board game, watching The Simpsons, whatever. Um,
Hitting on
you
girls that wouldn't date me. That's
exactly a lot
yeah,
of
that
that, a
was
lot of that.
yeah.
But the point is like I don't know how these youngins do it that she's a manager now is like hearing all these horror stories of the worst hinge profiles you've ever seen, like, okay, pro tip, guys.
Just the
I've been
tip. Just the pro
Just a
tip.
tip. I've been married for over 20 years. You've been married for over 15. I'm trying to remember now.
Do you count both?
It's let's not count the one that didn't work. I mean, I guess you did learn from that.
Because
That is a
if you count both this coming March, I will be have been married as long half as long as I've been alive.
okay.
Because
So
counting
there
both
you
would be
go.
23, but this yeah,
There's a
we're
lot
gonna
of
be
actually,
18.
let's
Yeah.
go ahead and count it because the point here is we have experience
Yeah.
both in the good and the bad of um don't have the first picture on your dating profile you in a strip club.
Unless you
Uh
want to date strippers.
Unless you want to date strippers, but most girls are gonna swipe left on that one.
Yeah, but
Same thing
and if yeah, have
if
some
you're
glow in there
wearing
too, you know.
if your first picture is you in a diaper with a furry mask on, that
Unless you want to date a furry.
You are really limiting your pool there, guys. We talked about the
See, I can't
666.
I
That's
can't
come on,
agree
guys.
with you because I gave the advice of anything you're into, lean into it.
Okay, but go where that is. This is a general dating app. This is not, farmers only. Anyway, point being, uh,
Oh, I had a client that she kept talking about things that she would always bring up OnlyFans, but she kept saying fans only, and nobody else in the room had the heart to correct her. So for like 2 years, she said fans only, which is it's heartening. She doesn't actually know about this. She
oh,
just
that's cute.
yeah, and
Okay.
yeah.
The the point being, you can see how once you have gotten out of that more social atmosphere of college, and now you're in a very different social atmosphere because the work social atmosphere is much more rigid. That's something Beck
Oh,
talks
well,
a
especially
lot
if you're
about
a
in this
guy and
book.
you want to date.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's much more rigid. As you say, if you're a guy and you're worried about HR departments who are run by awfuls, you got to tiptoe around asking someone out. And yet these are the only people you're ever around because it's work and then it's go home and relax. And do you get out? Well, if you want to start those those mental skills, those social skills have kind of atrophied in the same way that, oh crap, I've been sitting at this desk too long. Well, your muscles have atrophied. So it may be difficult. And so here's where some, practical advice comes in is now I had heard some of this, but I wasn't sure about this. So this is page 53
Wait,
in
you might have given us our meme. Hold on.
in chapter 3, which is when anxiety creatures get stuck. Um, oh dear. What have we got here? Know the work rules. Oh dear. Yeah.
It's appropriate. And okay, so for those that are just listening, a guy with an empty bubble, because you can just fill in the blanks there, is saying something sweet to another girl in the office, and she goes, "Oh, you're sweet," and he's good looking. He looks like Rob Lowe, with no nose apparently,
Yeah.
but then this creepy comic book guy says the exact same thing, and she's
He's
like, "Hello, HR, hello."
what's the oh crap, I just forgot the character's name. Is it Milton? My
Oh,
stapler
from Office
from
Space.
Office
Yes,
Space. Yeah.
they promised me a swing line.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
All right.
so yeah, appropriate is very context specific.
So this chapter was really interesting because um basically she's connecting all these seemingly disparate effects back to anxiety. It's the same mechanism that will result in a different presentation.
And I want to define anxiety here in my own terms, so don't go to a textbook for this, but I think if you take the long definition, it will fit to this. It is stress over future events. Well, let me even make that more concise. Stress over possible future events.
And she is talking about at the beginning of this chapter here a cluster of reactions technically known as a quote defense cascade operating on directives that evolved long before cognitive thinking. Parts of my nervous system were taking over control of my thoughts, perceptions, and behavior. Because I didn't understand what was happening, all the good intentions in the world didn't help me break the pattern. My conscious mind was overwhelmed before I had a chance to address my inner anxiety. Skip down a little bit where she talks about this. One of the baffling things about anxiety patterns is that they can lead to many different reactions, giving the illusion of having different causes when in fact anxiety is at the root of them all. You've probably experienced
It's
every
because
part of
there's
the defense cascade.
umpteen million possible futures.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But so now this was interesting because I had not heard these details before. I don't know if this is old hat to you. Um, She gives several examples. She uses a lot of anecdotes where she changes the details, but she's been practicing as a she's not a psychologist, so she calls herself a life coach, which is a silly title, but it works. And
Technically,
because
I'm supposed to call myself that, but I
yeah,
hate it. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, really? So
Yeah.
because her background is sociology, which as you say is really the group
Collective
like
psychology. Yeah.
collective psychology.
Yeah.
So that's why much of what she does is group therapy. of
Hmm.
getting people in a group and going out into nature. So you get both the nature and you get the interaction with other human beings, which I love that technique. Anyway, so quoting again from, so now I'm on page 53 here. Though their behaviors look completely different, again, this is after she gave a number of anecdotes of people who had these reactions um, that were part of this defense cascade. They're all reacting to a hardwired sense of threat. I've already mentioned the famous fight or flight response named in 1915 by Walter Bradford Cannon, who found that many animals secrete the same brew of high action stress hormones when they're in danger. Since then, other scientists have added new F words to the complex of fear responses, including fawn, freeze, and flop.
Mm, yep. Yep. This is
And I
something Sapolsky goes into as well. Yeah.
and I had not heard about this. And so what that is now, fight or flight, we all understand that kind of intuitively, and you can see that in, social interactions where you freak out and you just want to leave. Especially if you're super tismy, it's like, glitch, let me just run away from this conversation.
Yeah,
Literally.
and this is one of the the I like the way she did that, and her predecessors have done that. Is fight or flight is very misleading when you just use that term because
Hmm.
they're both the stress response. So if the lion jumps out of the bushes, like I said earlier, if I sprint away or if I punch it in the nose, it's the same chemicals involved. What we have is the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight. It's both. And so that's not there's no or there when you're talking about what's
Hmm.
happening in your body. There is no or. So we say fight or flight, it becomes misleading because you're thinking of, oh, I'm either going to be aggressive or I'm going to run away. Well, no, no, no. You're going to be in stress. Fight and
Hmm.
flight. Fight
Hmm.
and flight. It should be fight and flight. Now, parasympathetic is I'm relaxed. I'm comfortable. I'm in my place. If you're good in crowds, you're going to maintain your parasympathetic tone the whole time. Where if you suck in crowds, you're going to go into sympathetic mode, which is fight and flight, or whichever one is appropriate in the moment. Now, the freeze comes in because some people just don't handle it well.
Well, and let me read here since you
The,
freeze evolved to help animals hide from predators. Its goal is invisibility, and it works, even in situations where someone doesn't want to be invisible, because you
Mhm.
aren't actually a baby, deer hiding from the lion. So you don't want to be invisible, but you are reflexively, and I think she gives some examples of like primate behavior, which you've talked about before, of fawning over, the male, the alpha male, so you get in good, on his good side. You can kind of see that in primate behavior, and it might not seem like it, but that is a stressor response. That is why it is tied to anxiety.
Mhm.
Um, Flopping.
Well, okay, so
Oh,
just
go ahead.
stay with that thought. Fawning over, where does the anxiety come over? Come from? Because you're like, oh, well, you're in love. Your your juices are going, right? But what if I get rejected?
I desperately need this job. I need to make
So
my
you
boss happy.
overdo it. You
Yeah.
go in, you oversell, right? Because you're desperate, which is sympathetic nervous system.
Hmm.
Because what if I fail? What if I don't do this? Then I'm going to get the beta male, or I will be vulnerable in the pack because I didn't get in good with the one who's in charge. That kind of stuff. Yeah.
And so now flopping was interesting to me because I was like, oh, that like
Playing
hits
dead.
me. Exactly. That hits me
Yeah.
personally because, and this is where anxiety and depression can get very difficult to deal with because they kind of intertwine and overlap. Because this seems like, oh, that's depression. Well, if you've ever had a real adrenaline spike, like a close call with an accident, or oh crap, I almost stepped on a snake, or oh, is that a mountain lion? Yeah, that's a mountain
Or
lion,
your son almost
something like
walks
that.
off a cliff.
Your son almost walks off the top of the Grand Canyon. Yeah, when you crash, it's physically exhausting. And
Hmm.
that's what the flop is. Flopping is the nervous system's Hail Mary attempt to survive inescapable danger. The body shuts down, hoping to help itself outlast the crisis and heal from any injuries it may have sustained. You crash and your body says, "Stop. Stop
Hmm.
everything. We need to catch our breath," literally and metaphorically. And so
Which,
you just
yeah,
lie on the couch. You don't want to do anything.
on a cognitive level, I am actually semi in the middle of a crash right now
Mm,
because Monday I got fully certified that to for counseling in lethal methods for suicide.
hmm,
Going through that material to
oof,
get through the test and everything was stressful just by the
yeah.
nature of the material. And then I was like, okay, I'm done. I can go to bed. Oh, no, you can't because your mind's going through that stressful event. But then later, work yesterday sucked
Mm,
because I just wanted to lay down. And then work this morning was kind of ugh, because I just wanted to lay down. And we know in Western society you just don't have time to lay down unless you're
yeah.
fully retired. But it's like I mean I am in that crash phase right now where my body is like it doesn't matter that you got 7 hours of sleep last night because you need a little more. And by the way, you had a few bad dreams in the process,
Yep.
so it's
So
it's kind of
it wasn't
like
great
yeah,
sleep either. Yeah.
yeah.
So let me read two more paragraphs here because this is right up your wheelhouse and the stuff you like to talk about. And then we'll kind of go into a little more of how w once you understand this, then what you do about it.
Hmm.
Okay. Because again, the point here is to make connection because it is so important to both our individual and collective mental health. All right, so quoting from Martha Beck again, all of these reactions are brilliantly effective at protecting us in certain situation. Anger is a healthy response to injustice or attack. Running away helps us live to fight another day. A little reciprocal fawning, offering praise or help, facilitates many social encounters. When we don't know what to do, freezing can keep us from making fatal mistakes. And when we're sick or trapped, flopping can be the best way to conserve energy, rest, and heal. The problem is that we may involuntarily experience these reactions when they're not helpful. Even worse, any part of a defense cascade can turn into an anxiety spiral. We may find ourselves going into fight, flight, fawn, freeze, or flop mode, then telling ourselves stories to justify that reaction, thus priming the whole thing to happen more easily the next time we feel threatened.
Okay, so this is up my wheelhouse, and I do love to talk about this. So you were correct on both counts. Uh, where does that come from? Is two places. The one I already mentioned that you're thinking about future possibilities, but the second place, and we talked about this without these terms in your regret conversation,
Hmm.
because all the F's come from the same place. They're all a sympathetic response. Again, sympathetic nervous system response. They are all related to your flooding of cortisol, your stress response. The problem is, did you do the appropriate one?
Hmm.
Because they're all from the same base to the stimulus. Okay, so back to the lion jumping out of the bushes. Punching it in the nose or running away were both kind of good responses. Running away, probably the best. Freezing is not,
Hmm.
because it's already jumping out, which means it already saw you. You're not hiding from anything. Falling in love with the lion, probably not a good idea, right?
Yeah, don't
So
compliment the lion. I don't think it's
don't,
going to
yeah,
help.
don't fawn over the lion. Playing dead, maybe. I mean, if it's really hungry, it's gonna still smell you're fresh. It's but yeah, there were two appropriate responses there. And there were three inappropriate responses. Now, when we talk about anxiety, everything we do is semi based on past experience because everything in our mind is a memory. And so if you did the wrong thing one time, you're going to have anxiety about that thing in the future. Do I respond correctly? So if you have anxiety about public speaking, it might be because in the past you froze when you were supposed to be public speaking. You were in a stressful situation, and instead of giving the speech you needed to give, you froze.
And to her central thesis, which she touched on there with that last sentence, is if you have that overdeveloped, overactive left hemisphere, it is going to list all the reasons why that happened and why that's fine and why this is the way it is or should be, because there are all these potential terrible potentialities.
And that all goes through a filter of your schema. So, schema is when you have a model for something. And we develop schemas throughout our entire life because that's useful. We only have so many cognitive resources. So, the color blue would be a schema. My brain is actually processing wavelengths of light, but I've created this thing that is blue. Well, not me because I'm colorblind, but actually I can see blue. I have the one where red green is the hard one. Uh, and I we took a Stroop test in class the other day, and I kept mixing up red and green. So, but I only have blue cones. Uh, Better example. This is a thing of deodorant, right? So for those that are not watching, I'm holding up a stick of deodorant. I can walk into the store and walk up to that exact item and grab it, no questions asked. I don't have to read the label and go through it and say, oh, it has aluminum, zirconia, okay. And I don't have to do any of that because I already have a schema that says Sweat Defense Swagger Old Spice. Boom. Got it. That's useful because it saves cognitive resources. I can see that
Mhm.
from across the room and grab the right one. But the first time I do it, I have to spend a lot of cognitive resources to do it. The problem is when your schema doesn't match reality. I walk up and there's a stick in the path and I jump back. It's a stick. I wasted a lot of energy to jump back. If I'm walking by that bush and it shakes and I think lion and I sprint away, but it was only the wind. That was very costly in a metabolic stance. Now, we don't think about that very much in Western society because we have Taco Bell around the corner, but in the wild, that would be very costly because I just wasted a lot of energy on nothing. And we do that all the time mentally. That's this person is going to say this if I ask them this. I already have that in my mind because I've experienced similar reactions from a lot of people from the words I say. And so, how costly is that mentally? Because your brain takes a lot of energy. About a third of the energy your body uses all day long is your brain.
So be mindful of these things if you are trying to get out there, make connection, understand, okay, let me think about myself and which of those F's of those fight or flight or fawn or flop or freeze, which do I do? When do I do it? Why do I do it? And be mindful of it. And one of Beck's, big points is don't beat yourself up over it either, because that actually makes it worse. Because if you want to,
That's the message you need.
I know. I mean, that's why I'm here,
Quit.
is because
I've
I
I've
need to
told
hear
you
it.
how many you had to read somebody else. Now our relationship is in jeopardy because you didn't listen to me, but you listened to Martha Beck. Okay, I see how it is.
No, I listen to you. This is helping reinforce those things, but also more importantly, giving me techniques, which I'm about to get into one here, which is really silly, and it makes me, it's one of those. I don't want to say this because it's so dorky, but it actually works. So I went over last time that visualization exercise, and she's got a couple of those. Now, like I said, that one's pretty lengthy. It takes some time. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. She actually has a simpler technique for um for dealing with your anxiety monster, as she calls it. And did I mention horse whispering last time?
No.
Okay. This is especially useful to you because you got to break mules.
Yeah, and you
Good on you.
cannot get me on the back of a horse, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to. One day, I want to go through the process of getting on horses and getting over this. But it was there was that in Colorado.
Hmm.
There was also we had a horse, and my lovely stepfather loved to smack it in the ass with a
Oh,
switch
geez.
when one of us kids was on there. And so, yeah, horses and me are not friendly.
Hmm. So, uh, one of her criticisms of the mental health profession in general is the way we deal with mental health is so left hemisphere dominant, and we want to fight it.
Hmm.
We want to fight our anxiety. And her point is that is the exact opposite of what you should do because you're trying to fight or flight. That just makes the fight or flight more intense. And so the example she uses is that she once went out and watched a group of horse whisperers. And she said it was the most boring thing she ever saw because they weren't just whispering, like they weren't to break a domesticated foal. No, they had these Mustangs that had to be relocated. So their only human interaction was to be rounded up by ATV and helicopter, driven into a corral, and then loaded on a truck and shipped off somewhere else. Well, now they need to be acclimated to people. And she said these horse whisperers came in, and I was expecting fireworks because wild Mustangs that I just laid out what their only interaction ever with humans was, and they said these guys were so calm, I was bored because they were calm and they were patient. And that's the analogy she uses for how to deal with your inner anxiety. And she I did this the last week in class, and it was the first time I'd done this specific exercise, and I was like, crap, that's really dumb, but it really works, and it feels silly to say it out loud. But visualize your anxiety because it's unless you're a giant dork, you can't really visualize an anthropomorphic amygdala.
Hmm.
I can, but it actually works better for me if I
Looks like an
don't.
almond, by the way.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So it actually works better if you don't visualize it as an anthropomorphic amygdala. And for me, she's so either a small angry animal or some kind of monster. Imagine it. Okay. Now imagine soothing it the way you would if you had an anxious or an angry dog. That's a
Mm.
better example because more of us have had to deal with that. You've got, you know, a rescue dog or a wild cat or a stray or whatever. And we all kind of instinctively know, in much the same way that we all kind of instinctively know, you don't yell at a baby. You talk to it softly,
You would like to
soothe.
say we all instinctively know that.
All right, well, we all should instinctively know that. And so what I did the other day, waiting for class when the anxiety was spiking, and once we had this raccoon that just decided this is a good place to take a nap and curled up beside our front door. And I'm like, ooh, new pet. No, it didn't want to. You get too close to it, it starts growling and hissing. I mean, it's a wild animal. It's used to being around people because it's in a neighborhood, but it's still a wild animal. So I wanted to soothe it. I put out some water. I put out a little food and just softly shh, 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 shh. Anyone who remember Steve Irwin? He was always talking,
Hmm.
and he was so excited when he was talking to the camera about animals and because he loved them so much. But if he had that angry snake, his tone completely changed. And you can do that is envision whatever it is for you. And for me, I just thought I'm gonna kind of go into my mind, and my amygdala is the angry raccoon curled up on the front porch that wants to be left alone, and I'm trying to soothe it. And it actually works. It is so bizarre to say, but it's a very simple visualization exercise, and it works because and she goes into the witchcraft of the why of humming, talking softly, these kinds of things. This is why in certain meditative practices you have a chant, a kind of humming chant that
Hmm.
goes along with the meditation because there's witchcraft involved there for what that does to the stress centers of your brain, and it calms that
Well,
nervous system.
that's why so many religious rituals are repetitive.
Mm.
You know, think of like the rosary. It's repetitive. That over and over and over. It's a meditative practice.
And it is soft.
Hmm.
It is you're not fighting it. You're not, dang it, you idiot. Why did you do that?
Hmm.
It's, hey, shh, it's okay. It's okay.
Well,
You know what?
even
That's
look at music. Look at very popular music. You repeat the chorus. You repeat the chorus over and over again. I mean, Justin Bieber made a lot of money by saying a lot of babies.
oh jeez. So there is a much simpler visualization exercise you can use, and I actually do too. So when the anxiety is starting to spike, it is the raccoon of curled up, growling. Might lift its head and hiss at you a little bit, but just talk to it softly. Just visually put out a little food and water, and you're not getting too close. But hey, it's okay, it's okay. And then when it kind of gets out of control, one of my favorite movies is Lilo and Stitch. And for anyone who's seen it, he's going crazy. He's like, the dog, the rescue dog that you bring into the house, and it doesn't know what any of this is, and it's just going nuts all over everything. And Lilo puts a lei on him, and he goes, and then he just collapses into relaxation. And I kind of visualize that scene in my head when the anxiety starts to get out of control. And I was shocked at how it worked.
Hmm.
And like I said, it feels kind of silly to say out loud, but it works. And so if you get into that situation, there's another little technique for you that is very simple to do. And much like with the previous exercise, it helps if you do it beforehand by imagining, all right, let me think of, and I would recommend you think of a specific situation, especially something recent where you had an anxiety spike, where you had one of these F responses, and you're like, I wish I hadn't done that. Well, don't beat yourself up over it. Imagine that scene, replay that moment in your mind, and then go through the visualization exercise of whatever your anxiety creature is and soothing it gently and calmly.
Sounds good. That sounds like a great place to end this because we had action plan. We talked about some, I don't even know how we got here, but it was
Well,
good ending. Fantastic. I don't want
yeah,
to yeah, end it any other way. So try
it's
that, people. I'm going to try that myself because I mean, I got to give public speeches in
mhm,
school. I've got to see, it's easy for me in my gym because it's like my place is like my comfort zone.
mhm.
But when I'm in class or any other situation, it is hard for me to talk to people. And so we'll see how that goes. I'm going to try that. I'm going to use that visualization myself.
All right. Well, hopefully that helps somebody out there, and we will see y'all next time.
All right, later everyone.